I'll just share a little bit about my background. I was a high school biology teacher when I started my career, and loved teaching biology. Went back to graduate school at Cornell, thought I wanted to be a wildlife ecologist, got a master's degree in wildlife ecology, did that for a while, and then continued with a PhD in zoology. So my training is formally as a scientist, but I always had one foot in education. So even as a graduate student, I was taking wonderful things from the university collections out in schools and getting graduate students involved in K-12 education. Eventually I did this professionally. I was at the University of Colorado most recently, and then before that at Rutgers, doing mainly science outreach, but biology and education appointments. And this is an ideal job because we're a consortium. We have a lot of K-12 schools, both independent private schools in the city, but also public schools like the Harlem Academy. Harlem is such a that. Thurgood Marshall is a good example. So we have a mix, but we also have universities like Columbia Teachers College, NYU, a variety of universities, Hunter College, for example, City College has been a former member, the American Museum of Natural History. So we have this tremendous opportunity through this Forest Consortium to link higher ed to the K-12 level, and that's what attracted me to this position, the ability to share resources. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the forest, just very briefly, and I'll tell you about kind of my vision for education here, the directions we're going. It may be interesting to some of you. And I have two activities to kind of share some of the stuff we do with kids in terms of education. So the forest started, well, if you go back far enough, I mean, you can find giant short-faced bears and saber-toothed cats here. But after the Ice Age, this was mostly a coniferous forest, and as the climate warmed, it changed. And very recently, in some of your lifetimes, there would have been a dominant chestnut forest, so the chestnut blight, a pathogen introduced, decimated the chestnuts. And slowly what emerged is a red oak forest, so predominantly today an oak forest. But that is changing, and it's changing because of climate change. And nobody knows exactly what's going to emerge. And all kinds of invasive species. Barberry is a tiny shrub that escaped. It's from Japan originally. They plant it for cultivation. Birds eat the berries. They fly over the forest, and now it's all over. And it competes with things like blueberries. We've got an invasive insect, a scale insect that's decimating the hemlocks. Hemlocks are, one of the key species in the Northeast. Beautiful evergreen tree, and all through the forest they're dying because there's a tiny organism called the woolly adelgid that's been introduced, and science doesn't seem to have a way to stop it, not so far. And we're losing, you'll see as you go through the forest, magnificent hemlock trees. On the way to the reservoir, maybe 100 feet past the gate on the left, you'll see a huge hemlock. Looks like a ladder now because it's just dead branches. So a number of changes are happening for a number of reasons. The overpopulation of deer. It's very hard to manage deer, and they go through the forest kind of like lawnmowers and take out a lot of small vegetation, so huge ecological impact by deer. So the forest is changing. There's a lot of research going on here about changes related to warming and other kinds of trends. This forest has produced hundreds of research publications. It was really started as a modern forest preserve in the 1920s by some person with great foresight named Ernest Stillman. He was a forestry student, I believe, at Harvard, and he bought up the land here that makes up the forest. It's almost 5,000 acres. He bought it up because he wanted to start practicing modern forestry, which was a new idea in America in the 1920s. Forestry was an emerging field. He wanted to apply modern forestry techniques. They did a lot to the forest to improve its health. And there were 3 forest directors. He hired formal forest managers, and this was a managed experimental forest for about 40 years. In 1949, when he died, he willed the forest to Harvard, unfortunately. And it's was called, it's still on the map, is the Harvard Black Rock Forest. But Harvard used it, and they published 50 publications approximately here over those 40 years. They had a team, our old headquarters building. Headquarters building is their original offices and research space. And they did the work for about 40 years, but they have forests closer to Harvard in New England, and they decided that they didn't really need this facility anymore. And so they asked William Gould, who was the chair of the American Museum of Natural History, what can we do with this forest? And he had the vision and foresight to decide to make it a forest preserve into perpetuity. And rather than find buyers for Harvard, he bought it outright and established Black Rock Forest Preserve. The consortium leases the forest, these buildings, the schools that come here, the universities, researchers lease it from the foundation, the Black Rock Forest Preserve. And this forest will never be developed. It's been held in trust because of the vision of William Gould, who's really the founder of this, not of preserving the forest so much as this idea of having a consortium of uses. And that goes to our mission. The mission of the forest and the consortium is to advance and promote scientific understanding of nature through education, research, and conservation. And those are the three things we do here. A lot of education, many, many publications on research, and some conservation programs in research and conservation biology. And we're wanting to do more of that kind of conservation work. One project we're thinking about, you may be impressed like I am when you come up to the Palisades. There's so much open space, so much preserved land, parks. West Point is our neighbor. They have an enormous forest. Across the valley is Scunnamunk State Park. It's an enormous tract. So there's a lot of preserved land around here, but there are parcels in between that are being developed. And we need wildlife corridors so that this space is a contiguous space of value for genetic exchange between animal species. And so there's a project in the works now to buy up more land, but also to create wildlife corridors so that we can preserve this ecosystem in a more intact state. I-87, I don't know, did you guys come up 87 or did you come up the Palisades? But 87 is a huge, highway here just beyond the forest, and it's a major obstacle for wildlife to get across. And so research on how we can create corridors under it so that Scunnamunk in particular is connected to Black Rock and to West Point is something that's of great value.
Black Rock lies entirely on this side of 87.
On this side, on the east side of 87.
And then on the other side.
And along 87 and some areas between are farmlands, but they're being developed more and more. And the worry is if we don't buy up parcels or have other agencies working in concert with us to save some of that land, we'll become isolated, at least for large mammals that need to move. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at today. The lodge was built in 2004, the Science Center, after that. So these facilities are pretty new. And school groups have been coming here since '89, but now they have this wonderful lodge so they can come out from the city, or anywhere really, and spend the night, or some of the schools are on mods, like the Calhoun School. Mods they take 1 or 2 classes in 6 weeks in their high school, so they can come out and spend big chunks of time, which is a wonderful thing for the students to be able to really spend time in the forest. And we have in our science center, you see there's some great facilities. There's lab space now, places where we can do wet labs, that kind of stuff. And we initiated a summer program. I'm looking around because I had a booklet, but I don't know where I set it down. Matt will talk to you more, but we just started a summer science class program. And I put the word out to all of you. We're having trouble getting students registered. These are classes here starting in July. They're week-long classes, and they're taught by mostly doctoral students. Vladimir is scheduled to teach a class. We have faculty from the consortium. Wonderful opportunity for students to really apprentice with scientists. It's not so much about all they're going to learn, it's that they're going to interface They spend a week with a scientist learning about or exploring a subject area. So we're really excited about that. We have 18 classes. One of them is happening in Florida at a biological marine lab. It's very reasonable, including the flight and the week in Florida. It's $12.50. There's another one that's taking kids to the Adirondacks, and then there are 16 classes here. Some of the classes are focused on art, and one of them is with Storm King Art Center, comparing kind of notebooking and observation in nature with what you would do in a sculpture park, and what the interface or overlap between observation, nature, and art are. So, and taught by some amazing, amazing people. Really great opportunities for kids, so we're trying to get the word out. Matt will give you some booklets if you know kids or you have connections to their middle and high school classes. We would love to get more kids engaged up here. Questions about that? Anybody? Anything about the history? I know that's kind of quick. I want to focus more on where we're going educationally. You guys are all here because of the Robert Noyce, am I right? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful program. And we have a similar interest in doing things with undergraduates and training them to become scientists. And I'll share how that fits into our overall kind of strategic plan. When I arrived, I've only been here a short period of time. I came in about, I think it's been 18 months now, so a year and a half. I came in August 2 years ago. And the time has gone very quickly. But when I arrived, I was able to follow all kinds of school groups around the forest and see what they did. We have some wonderful curricula already established. The problem I saw right away, though, here is that most groups leave the city, Calhoun School, for example, or the Montessori School or Harlem Academy. They get on the bus and they don't get here till 10:30. And they're so happy to be here. Just like you guys were happy. You get out of your van, it's like, oh, I just want to run around, have a good time. And then they have to leave at 1:30. And they're gone. And I'm thinking, wow, we really can't do very much, in that amount of time. And even when they stay overnight, time is really, really tight. It's hard to do the kinds of great science. So my vision is that we have to take the forest out into the schools and get away from the field trip model. Right now, and in the past, this place has been a place for field trips.
I'm thinking Mount Mary College.
Yeah, close by.
Do you have any connection?
Not so far, and I don't know what the history is. We have a very strong relationship with the Newburgh Public Schools, and they're a consortium member, and they have great need in Newburgh. But Mount St. Mary's College, and I'm too new to know what the history is or why. It may be that nobody's been pushing. One of the limiting things is we're small, and the forest is small, and we can't have unlimited numbers of members. So it started with a group of independent schools and a few universities, and it's growing. And our concern is how big can we get before this lodge and the facilities, can't accommodate very many members. So that may be part of the reason. So we really need, in my opinion, to send things out into the schools and have activities that teachers can do in the classroom before a visit, or even independent of the visit, and after they come here. And so we want to become a very integrated science center. We want to become part of the science department of Beaches Consulting Schools. At least I can't speak for all of the staff, but that's kind of the idea that I have. And to do that, I want to create modular curricula on a variety of themes. And I want the curricula to be scaffolded so that there's a menu and it serves lower elementary all the way up through undergraduates. And that on that menu you can pick and choose, or you can take the activities we've developed. I'm going to share a couple with you. And you can say, oh, well, the target is for middle school, but I can scale this down to 4th grade, or I can scale it up to 10th grade biology. We can't develop things for every grade and every set of things we do. So these two bins right here are materials about mammals that schools can receive. And they can be mailed to the schools, they can borrow them. I'm still writing the curriculum, but I've been out in the schools actually teaching it for some time now. And so mammals is a unit that I want to have a menu of activities. And I'll share what some of the mammals activities are. But we want to have that for entomology. We want to have something for forest ecology, herpetology. The main areas that you can imagine make up a forest ecosystem. There should be materials in a variety of these areas, and then a menu of things that people can borrow. So the second obstacle that I face is there's only a staff of 7 here. So I am the education person, and there's just me. So eventually I want to hire a master teacher. I hate that term, but you all know what that is. Have somebody that can really effectively do these curricula out in the schools, like I can do, so that we're sending stuff to the city, sharing it with a lot of schools, and not just, I mean, I want, for me, my passion, I spent a lot of time in Newark, in inner city Newark schools. I'm passionate about underserved kids, and so I'm wanting more and more to share these great resources that we have with those populations in those schools. So that's the second piece, but another idea I have, and I did this very effectively, and it relates to what you guys are doing. I did this at Rutgers. I had a core of undergraduates that I trained, and they were undergraduates of color. They were all really appropriate role models for the kids in the middle schools that we were serving in Newark. And we had a program at Delaware Water Gap National Park, or recreation area, and I trained them to teach science to the kids in the context of outdoor recreation. So they went on backpacking trips, canoeing, all kinds of stuff, but they were learning good science while they did it. And so in the forest here, I would love to have kind of a cadre of undergraduates and maybe master's students that become our curriculum experts. And they can take some of the things we develop. They can take the forest in the schools. They can also hop on the bus and come out here with students so they can do free activities, and they can take the bus out here with the kids on their field trip. They can go back in the classroom and do some great things as follow-up to the field trip. So it's not so hit or miss. Right now, like I said, field trip comes out, teachers do something very specific, usually go on a hike, and then they don't come back for 6 months or a year. And so I'm hoping to develop ways to really integrate this forest into all the school members and at every grade level. And beyond science, there's an amazing history here. I should have shared this. So this forest is connected to the city of Newburgh, where Washington spent a winter. His headquarters was in Newburgh, and West Point Military Reservation was in existence then. And Washington's troops built a road through the forest that you can still walk on. It's called the Continental Road. And there are trees alive along that road. There's a huge white oak tree that was a fairly large tree when his troops built the road by it. There's an 1834 stone house in the forest that you'll probably get to see today, or at least pictures of it. You know, right after the Revolution, this part of New York State was opened up, and farmsteads. So there's an original 1834 farmhouse still in the forest, stone house. Amazing Revolutionary War history all around this forest. So I want to work with historians, West Point historians, historians in the universities, to create really great history curricula that can happen out here as well. And I'm also very fond of the Hudson River Valley, or the Hudson River School of Painting. And so there's a really rich artistic tradition in this valley. And abutting the forest is Storm King Art Center, which is one of the premier sculpture parks in the world. So we have great art resources here too. So this is a great place for teachers to come from all kinds of disciplines and learn. So teacher development eventually becomes something that we do in this lodge and in this area. And I feel like that's probably the most important thing, because through one teacher we can reach hundreds, if not thousands of students. So we're going to go in that direction eventually, where we're doing a lot of teacher development up here in the summer. Questions? So that's kind of an overall view of the strategic plan and where we're headed with education. Anybody have a question?
So have you already ran any of these teacher educations, like summer internships? Because you said you did one with undergraduates before.
I did that at Rutgers. I haven't done anything with undergraduates here yet,
But you'd like to.
but we're planning to, and we're working with the consortium administration at different universities to kind of find a way to do that. We've done some teacher training workshops here. In March, we had a big teacher training workshop. So,
And when you envision these, how long of a program do you envision it for?
for me, what I would like to see is that I get undergraduates as freshmen or sophomores, and I hold on to them for 4 years.
But like, how often do they visit the forest?
Well, yeah, I don't have those details worked out. They would be trained here, and then they would probably depend to some degree on their schedule and how often they're able to do it during the school year.
Right.
But if I had a cadre, because teachers want to come at various times. Usually they come on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays though, so that.
But for example, like an opportunity for them to do, let's say, a certain length of time during the summer or something like that.
Summer would be mostly for training.
Yes,
Yeah,
teacher training.
for them.
Yeah.
But when we do have groups here, yeah, they could do some extended, longer things in the summer. We'll have,
That's sort of something that would be excellent for the program that we're designing, because we are ultimately trying to make science educators.
right,
So to have BlackRock as a resource that our students could use, we would pay them for the internship, so it would be a paid internship at the BlackRock Labs. But, they would spend, I guess, and I'm just trying to figure out what would be a reasonable time, a week, 2 weeks, or
yeah.
not too long.
I haven't thought enough about it, I guess, to really know,
Okay.
but the longer the better, I would say.
So that, I agree.
For sure.
Okay.
Um,
But that's something you would be willing to do.
Yeah, it's something we're entertaining. The problem is always for us now is space and, competing programs, summer classes. I wanted to have 6 weeks of summer classes for this summer.